you get to choose who you are. And sometimes the best starting point is choosing who you don't want to be. And sadly, for a lot of guys, it's, well, I don't want to be like my dad. And the reason I say it sadly, because I would hope that my sons would one day not say the same thing.
You're listening to the Connected Parenting Minute with Will and Carrie Ann Standfest. This podcast is a conversation about parenting using connection-first, trauma-informed principles. Because when you lead with connection, everyone feels seen, which is the foundation to a more peaceful home. This podcast reminds you that you don't have to be a perfect parent, but we can all get a little better, one connected parenting minute at a time.
Hello and welcome back to the Connected Parenting Minute. I'm so glad that you're joining us here this evening on our podcast. And tonight, strangely enough, I am not joined by the lovely Carrie Ann Standfest. I am joined by the one and only Ryan North.
Hey, I didn't ask this before I agreed to this. Do I have to do the back and forth one connected parenting minute at a time sign-off thing you guys do?
Ooh, maybe.
Well, we might have to pause and tell me which part of what the script is.
Ryan North is a good friend of ours and he's in town, been speaking at a conference. You want to give him the 30-second elevator pitch of what you guys do?
Yeah, so my wife Kayla and I, we have a company called One Big Happy Home. We do training for churches, schools, parents, child placing agencies, both private and state. And we have some media on there. And one of those things is the Empowered Parent Podcast. We did that for many years with our friend Chris Turner. And we're coming up on like 200 episodes. So yeah, lots of fun. We get to sit and talk about the stuff. A lot of ways, what we've learned and how we've applied it. And sometimes how we failed, but kept trying. So I actually do like that because it's very therapeutic for me, the podcast. I don't know if you and Carrie Ann think that, but
oh yeah,
it's great. It's great therapy for me because, you know, I started just sort of confessing how we weren't great at some of these things, but we kept trying until they started to work. And then when people say, well, that was really helpful to learn that somebody with a microphone wasn't crushing it either, that kind of gave us the license to be more confessional and therapeutic. Use it as a therapy tool for us.
Yeah, that's what Carrie Ann and I were actually unpacking the other day as we're kind of prepping for the new season and trying to talk through some episodes.
Yeah.
She's like, I find it so therapeutic to just unpack stuff on the air and go through it. And then she's like, there's something about the conversation and recording it, the back and forth that just really crystallizes things.
Yeah, you get out of your head, right? And
yeah, exactly.
That's so valuable. It's why talk therapy persists. It's why the Bible says you confess your sins to each other, because there is something therapeutic about getting out of your own head and healing. I did enjoy the episode that we recorded. I don't know what sequence you're going to release these in, but the episode with me, you and Carrie Ann, because she said before we hit record, we usually like plan out things and write it on the board, but I'm just going to throw a question out there. And I'm like, yes,
that is awesome.
Let's do that. So hopefully she liked that episode and likes that episode when she listens to it. Otherwise, because if she doesn't, she's like, I'm never doing that with writing.
It's a growth moment for all of us here.
There we go.
All right. So tonight it's just the two guys here. And the idea is to talk to other guys. We are recording this in, I was going to say July, but it's still June. Recording this in June. Father's Day was a few weeks ago. Yep. And it really just got me thinking that as fathers, I think we really have a unique role in the lives of our children.
Yeah.
And I really kind of got pensive as I'm more than halfway through my 40s here. And you start thinking about, as you approach your 50s and stuff like that, you start thinking less about direct impact and more about legacy.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
At least for me.
Yeah.
And so it really kind of gave me this, I felt like a step back and kind of like the long view of where is the arc of my life going and how is my parenting and specifically being a father, how is that impacting my children and then eventually my grandchildren and where that all goes. And just, I don't know, it's an interesting thought that I had that I really wanted to just unpack with another guy. And
yeah. So while you were saying that, something came to my memory. So I'm assuming that means I should share it. Years ago, my friend Bruce, he and I were the two speakers at a dad's retreat in Texas. And he was talking about being a father and a husband was kind of what he was talking about. And he said, and I'll never forget it because this is about 10 years ago. He said, I'm not a bad guy. I just didn't have a good example of what it meant to be a father and a husband. And so that's that always stuck with me for a whole bunch of reasons. And one of them is that, you know, our dads are from a different era. And certainly so they were raised in a different era, then they parented in a different era, and now we're parenting in a different era. And not just in a different era, but in a different environment. In that our families have kids that were not born to us. They came to us through the child welfare system. They came to us through direct adoption, and so I have to learn a lot of new things in order to not just parent a neurotypical kid who's securely attached, who was born to the family and understands that even though dad might yell, or we're still from the spanking era of kids.
Yeah.
That may get mad about that, but it would not be a relational barrier for us because there's this overarching theme that he has proven to be trustworthy. Now I'm raising kids that don't have that.
Oh yeah.
And so I have to learn. And so, Bruce's words hold true for all of us, in that none of us, you or I, had an example of what it was to be a dad of a child who came up through the foster care system. So now I have to do some combination of learn really fast, wing it, figure out a bunch of A/B tests, what works, what doesn't with this individual. And I think that is for me, the challenge of being a dad is I can't just go to my dad and say, hey, Pops, tell me what you would do in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because, my dad, the only tool my dad knows that exists is a hammer.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know what your dad's favorite tool is, but mine's hey, Dad, we have to delicately install this glass frame. Okay, hand me my hammer.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's kind of how my dad goes.
And that's so true. And because on a couple of different levels there too, of not going back to our fathers, I think that's an ongoing theme for most men.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because a lot of us, and I think you said this yesterday in one of our conversations, a lot of us start to define who we are by who we're not.
Yeah.
Right. And it is not uncommon in the men that I've met and had relationships over the years to say, look, I want to be a better father because my dad did X, Y, and Z, and I'm not going to do that to my kids. I don't want that to be their experience. Right. And so on top of the fact that a lot of us kind of have that underlying, there's so many things my father did that I don't want to repeat. And we need to prove that we're reliable and the provider and we can handle things. And then on top of that, like you said, I think there's a very real thing that we are raising kids in the 2010s and 2020s that is very different than the 1980s and 90s.
Yeah. I mean, not just parenting, Will, but also, how you relate to Carrie Ann and how I relate to Kayla is vastly different than how our parents relate to each other.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why I'm maybe it's easier to define myself by what I don't want to be than what I do want to be. This is advice that people give to business owners. Figure out what you don't want to do, figure out what you're not going to do, and then focus on the other stuff. Because sometimes we get really wrapped up in all the things you want to be, and you lose sight of what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Mm.
I have both formal and informal working with families, but also with some men. And so if we've done any coaching and stuff, typically, this doesn't always happen, but a lot of times it happens that we'll trade cell phone numbers. And so this guy texts me a few weeks back and he says, hey, dude, can we talk? So I said, yeah, I'm free at noon today. So he calls me. I said, what's going on? And he said, so first of all, he and his wife are both, we'll use the clinical term firecrackers.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's some external pressures going on at home, some stuff with the kids. There was a lot going on, to be fair to both of them. And they went out to dinner and something was said in the car right on the way home. And it just escalated. And both of them went, you know what? This conversation needs more gasoline.
Right.
And so by the time they got home, he said, and she actually said this to me because I know them both, not just him. And because she confirmed what he said, that she went to the room, got a duffel bag out of the closet, jammed some T-shirts and underwear in it, threw it into his general direction in the living room and said, get out.
Oh, wow.
He said, I'm not leaving. He went from gasoline to fire extinguisher the moment that bag came sailing at him.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm not leaving because I don't want you here. He said, I won't talk to you. I won't interact with you. I will avoid you the best of my abilities, but I will not walk out of that door. And she's like, well, why not? And he said, because my dad left when I was 4 and I didn't have a dad for my entire childhood and I will not do that to my family.
Wow.
So you can be mad at me, but I'm not abandoning ship.
Wow.
That's not an option for me.
Mm.
I know. And it's moving, right? Because here's this guy in the midst of conflict being yelled at by somebody who at this point he has no desire to be around, but the mere mention that he would leave his family. He's like, no, I will not do that to my wife. I don't care how mad you are at me. I don't care how angry I am at you. I will not do that to my kids. I'll sleep on the couch. I won't speak to you, but I'm not leaving because I will not be the guy who abandons his family. And to me, that's always such a great example of you get to choose who you are.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best starting point is choosing who you don't want to be. And sadly, for a lot of guys, it's, well, I don't want to be like my dad. And the reason I say it sadly, because I would hope that my sons would one day not say the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes think, well, the easiest path to that is just to say yes to everything. Well, no, I mean, there's research on why being a permissive parent's a really dumb idea.
Mm-hmm.
But so we don't say yes to everything, but we do connect, we do invest. And my 22-year-old son that we had a lot of conflict with when he was in his later teen years after he got out of high school, he calls or texts me once a day to tell me something.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Sometimes it's sort of like, dude, why do I have to talk about this? I never say that to him. I'm just grateful that after all the deep water we've had to go through with him, and he calls his mother every day. And he'll just call me and say, hey, did you see this? It'll be like a sports fact or something like that or whatever. But like he'll call his mother and talk to her for like 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And most days she's like, oh my gosh, it's so good that after all the trouble we had, that we reestablished that bond. And some days she's like, I didn't have time for 20 minutes on the phone today. I'm going to just assume my son doesn't listen to your podcast. I'm going to hope he doesn't because I don't want him to think negatively of that. But the good news is if you stay faithful to the task, but the problem with staying faithful to the task is the moment you're under pressure, you revert to type, right?
Oh yeah.
And so if your dad was a yeller, guess what happens when the kids aren't following the rules, respecting a boundary, doing what they're supposed to do, pick the reason, you're going to yell.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If your wife was, and I don't know your parents, I've never met them, but if your mother-in-law was somebody who, when she got frustrated or reached her max, would just throw up the arms and do what you want to, I don't care. Well, the more the pressure mounts, the more internally there's going to be pressure on her to respond the exact same way to the kids.
Yeah.
And so I think that we have to choose who we want to be. And people say, well, that's not that easy. Nothing worthwhile is easy.
Yeah. I was going to say that.
What did Kennedy say? We choose to do things because they're hard, not because they're easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really our fundamental call as men.
Yep.
Is that we're called to carry the burden, to carry the things that are not easy. And that's not a sexist thing. That's not I need to, my wife can't handle it thing, because Lord knows that my wife can handle a lot.
Yeah. I had lunch with your oldest son yesterday. He and I went out to the deli and got sandwiches, and I came back and Carrie Ann was like hosing grass clippings off the driveway. And when we left, she was pruning a plum tree, and in between that, she mowed the yard. And I said to your son, does she ever sit still? And he goes, well, I don't think she likes to. I love his, like, if you ask him a direct question, he'll give you like a one sentence answer. And it's just usually like, yeah, it reminds me that you don't need a lot of words to make a point, I guess. Yeah. I mean, not being a sexist thing, we do end up talking with couples a fair amount. And one of the things that I've come to understand is that we are wired differently, right?
We are.
You can't even, like, anybody who argues with that needs to read like a 4th grade science book, because, and I'm specifically talking about adults, right? So Carrie Ann has higher levels of estrogen than you do. You have higher levels of testosterone than she does. And then that manifests itself in different ways. But one of the ways that you are hardwired is to protect the people around you.
Yes.
And so when you do that in your family, somebody might say, well, that's just a sexist view of your wife. Well, okay, but if you do it out in the playground and something bad happens, I know that the exact same thing's going to happen. You're going to get the kids behind you.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're a hero. But when you're the exact same person in your home, you're like, well, you're not respecting your wife. No, because I respect her so much, I'm going to do whatever I can to make her life less hard.
Absolutely.
And that's not because I'm concerned with her happiness or any of those kinds of things, the rabbit trails. Like, I legitimately wish for my wife's life to be less difficult. I don't mean that my goal is to use private jets and islands in the Bahamas, although those both do sound nice.
I mean,
that's not the goal. The goal is to create an environment where she doesn't have to stress about money.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so I work hard for that. I'm up here speaking at an event, had meetings while I was at the event, because I view that the leadership of our family as my highest calling in the world. Because if I lead our family well, that creates an environment where Kayla can thrive, and that creates an environment where our children can thrive and my grandchildren can thrive. And so we have to be important, right? So you know that we have Leadership Lab. It's one of the things we do, the One Big Happy Home. And our core definition of leadership is create an environment where the people you're responsible for can succeed. Well, if you define leadership like that, and I think you should, then you have to lose the whatever your anger or your issue with me saying I need to lead my family well, because you realize that me saying I want to lead my family well is not me telling other people what to do, but rather working really hard where other people can be successful.
That's fantastic. I'm in that Leadership Lab class with you, and so that definition of leadership has really crystallized things for me.
Yeah,
like the amount of clarity that provides of what good leadership looks like. Of leaders are responsible for the environment in order that to help the people that they're leading succeed. Like it creates. There's such an image there of I've heard the saying that men are a thermostat, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of setting the temperature in the home. You're kind of creating that environment within your home so that your children can succeed, so that your wife has margin to do the things that she's called and capable of doing. And that's such a great picture, I think, of what the highest calling of fatherhood is to be a good leader within your home. Not that you're the authoritarian, not that you're laying down the law, not that you're getting everybody in line. It's that you're trying to create an environment so each of these uniquely gifted people within your care are able to succeed in their own way. And that's a high calling.
Yeah. My wife, and sometimes our life gets a little complicated, Will, because our job is connected to the reality of our existence.
Right.
And we both do the same job. And so, do the same job. We co-own a company together. And so there's no real respite from adoption, foster care, trauma, attachment, neuroscience, or whatever in our home ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to be really, really mindful of that. And we really, really have to, again, this is now parenting's a leadership exercise, because your wife is equally as responsible to the children for creating the environment and responsible to you to create an environment where you can succeed, right? And I think when Kayla and I figured out that it becomes a not a codependent relationship, but an interdependent one, right? And so we think of ourselves as that Ryan's good by himself, Kayla's good by himself, Ryan and Kayla are good together. Mm-hmm. So I come up here and spoke at a conference. She speaks at things without me. We speak together a lot of the time. So even just from a public presentations perspective, we have that interdependence on it. And so we're both responsible for each other. And so because I end up in a lot of meetings, and then those meetings have follow up and we're creating things, writing proposals and stuff like that, Kayla said, okay, we typically split a lot of the parent chores in the house. She'll do the laundry, or if I do the laundry, I'll pay one of the kids to do our laundry. And so some real world experience for the kids there. Well, it's my 12-year-old. She's like, Daddy, I don't have a job. Okay, I'll pay you to do your sister's laundry, our special needs daughter. So that's her job. She does Addie's laundry.
That's great.
And so what Kayla has done is she's like, I'm going to take on more of the stuff around the house to create some margin for you to do the work stuff. And so probably for about 6 months now, my wife's done all the laundry at the house. And somebody might say, okay, so you just make your wife do your laundry? No, my wife chose to do our laundry because she goes, if I do the laundry, you can leverage your time for something that helps our family in a different way.
Yeah.
You kind of got to get to the point where you have that kind of relationship because no corporate CEO, and again, I don't associate leadership and titles, but I also do recognize that titles come with leadership responsibilities. Whether people walk in those responsibilities, well, that's different. But no corporate CEO. Okay, so your employer, I don't know if you've ever told people you work for in the air, so I won't say, but like how many people does your employer employ globally?
Like 100,000 in that ballpark. Yeah,
so it's called 100,000. They have one CEO and 99,999 people who are not CEO.
Yeah.
To think that your company is successful with the CEO and everybody else gone, well, that's just insane, right? It ceases operations by tomorrow, if that's the thinking on it. And so we have to realize that if you do have the defined leadership role, the defined leadership position, the defined leadership title, which for Christian families, we're going to say the defined leadership person there is dad. Mm-hmm. Well, you don't succeed if your employees aren't successful. I'm not trying to reduce your family to your employees, but the other people on your team, if they're not successful, and if they're not successful, and this is what I've learned, if my wife doesn't succeed at what she needs to do, or if my children don't succeed at what they're supposed to do, I used to get frustrated at my wife and get angry at my children. But now I realize, what could I have done differently to create an environment where they could have been successful? And now that comes back to the original premise. My dad never did that.
Yeah, right.
Everything was everybody else's fault. To this day, he's in his 70s. And, if he yells, it's because you made him yell.
Right. Yeah. And trying to model that for our children as any teenager. I'm certainly not trying to throw this particular child under the bus, but that's the response we get a lot of times is you kind of when I'm talking to this kid, I'm like, you broke a boundary. You weren't supposed to do this. We have to either change the boundary or there needs to be a consequence or whatever that ends up looking like for that particular kid. And the response is, well, if you would just let me do this, so it's my fault.
Yeah.
That he's like, well, if you would just let me do these things, then I wouldn't have to break the boundaries. And it's one of those conversations that you're like, no.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not just one of those conversations we go, no, it also becomes, I don't want to be theatrical, but psychologically distressing.
Right.
Because you're like, my kid views the world like,
yeah.
I wouldn't get any speeding tickets if there weren't speed limits. Well, while that is factually accurate, it's not sustainable nor sane.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's where leadership as an exercise and really practicing that with our children.
Yeah.
That's where the rubber hits the road is how do I help my child understand and how do I lead them well in a way where these boundaries are presented as things that are going to protect you, even though you don't necessarily understand them.
Yeah.
And going back to our previous conversation too, of how flexible am I in helping their voice be heard so that I can create an environment where you can succeed.
Yep.
Right. And because in the end, I think that I like that leadership is really a practice of creating the environment where people we are responsible to can succeed. And in this context, being our family.
I will tell you what was a turning point in our family for me. And you know my wife well enough to know that she is, she's from the South. I don't know if Texas is really the South, but it's in geographically the southern half of the United States. And they have a phrase down there called iron butterfly.
Okay.
Meaning that butterflies are so delicate and beautiful and mesmerizing, but you don't mess with an iron butterfly because you will hurt. So it's meant to be, I think it's meant to be a woman who's both filled with grace and strength, an iron butterfly.
Oh, that's nice. I like
You're right. So,
yeah.
So my iron butterfly wife, because I know that she is that person, I realized there was intent behind this. I didn't realize it at the time. But she said to me one day, you're really a great boss. People like working for you. She didn't say it with that tone. She let her sincerity, like, look, you're a really great boss. People like working for you. I've heard her tell other people love working for Ryan. And I'll give you an example of that. 2 jobs ago, at a place that I haven't worked in almost 10 years, one of the people who worked for me, if we'll post a picture of it, like something bigger, like speaking at an event, right? Kate will take a picture of me on stage and I'll post it and she'll text me, boss, so great to see you walking your calling.
That's
10
beautiful.
years after she worked for me.
Oh,
I'm still boss.
Yeah.
And so when my wife said, you're a great boss, people like working, what I heard was, you're a great boss, people like working for you. Why don't you bring those skills into our home?
Ooh.
Now, she may not have intended it, but I certainly heard that.
Yeah.
And that changed the way I interacted with her. It changed the way I interacted with my children. My children now, instead of hiding things, will say, I should have come to you sooner. I'm struggling with this. My wife and I very rarely, if ever now, have real conflict. We do sometimes. You're our friends, we do sometimes. But sometimes disagreements are handled with maturity. And you're like, dude, you're almost 50. You should be handling disagreements with maturity. We can disagree on an issue without it becoming a full-blown argument. If we do have an argument, it is smoothed over and reconciled pretty quickly thereafter. And I think one of the turning points was, you're a great boss. People like working for you. And then I heard a voice say, well, why don't you act like that guy in our home? And so what that meant is why. So I think what makes me a good boss is I'm not demanding. I'm interested in you. Like I knew everybody's kids' names, their birthdays. I knew if your kids had doctor's appointments, dentist appointments. I knew if your puppies' names of all my employees. Somebody told me this when I got early into managing employees. People need to know you care about them.
Yeah.
And so my office was at the end of a hallway. And I would stop in every single office down that hallway. I would say, how's it going? how are the kids? How's your husband? Blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. How's your wife? And so I genuinely got to know these people and really care about these people and was interested in them. And then if there was an issue at work, it was always, okay, that's not great. Let's figure out a path forward.
Right.
And so what I heard my wife is like, okay, well, why can't you just show a general interest? And it's, I mean, not that I'm not interested in my children at the time, but like really deeply getting to know each of my kids, getting to understand her and say, okay, well, whatever happens, let's figure out the path forward rather than being reactive and punitive.
Yeah.
And if I can do that for adults who presumably their first line of loyalty to me is that, I authorize their payroll when HR sends it over, every 2 weeks, then I certainly can do that for my children. And I took it seriously. And I'm actually now going to ask her if that's what she meant when she said it. Because in my mind, it is what she meant. And it was transformative for me. And so it's like, be less like the bad example and love your family the way you love people who are loyal to you because you pay them.
That's beautiful. Well said, Ryan.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this dad's conversation. And Ryan, if they want to hear more from you, where should they go?
So onebighappyhome.com or any of the socials at onebighappyhome.
And Ryan has a devotional book out there.
Thank you for saying that, Will.
For adoptive and foster parents that we have, not only have we bought and enjoyed ourselves, but we've started giving to some of our families that we're either coaching or working with and stuff like that. So I would highly recommend you go check that out.
Yeah, it was fun this morning, signing books at your dining room table.
It was good. Thank you again for listening. And before we go, I just want to remind you that you don't have to be a perfect parent, but we can all get a little bit better. One connected parenting minute at a time.
Thank you guys for listening to my mom and dad's podcast. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.
For more parenting tips or to connect with us, check out the Connected Parenting Minute on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Or you can send us an email using connectedparentingminute@gmail.com.